All right, we're live. What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com. And this is I don't know, it's the video, the live video, and we're going to talk about legends and myths. And to do that, we've got Mr. Russ Leach, a longtime friend here, and back on the show, and I'm back in my groove, I think. So that's good. So how you doing, man? What's going on?
Yeah, good. Thanks. It's really good to see you again, and
Yeah.
good to see you back in the groove.
Yes.
Because you inspired me while you were doing what you were doing. So thank you. But yeah, it's all good. Very, very, very busy.
Yeah.
Some things I can talk about, some things I can't, and but it's all good. It's all good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, man, I don't even, to be honest, I don't know 100% where to start, but I guess a good place to start is, and sorry guys, I didn't get a video out last week. I was supposed to do this video last week with Russ, but I totally flubbed, totally stood Russ up. But
I'm used to
but it was I don't know. Sometimes you just have those weird brain fart days or whatever, and I've been so busy at work, it's insane. But anyways, we're here today, and I will say just at the top, just so everybody knows, tomorrow, next week, I won't, most likely won't have a video either because I'm going on vacation. But from here on out, I'm gonna at least have a video a week. So look forward
nice.
to that. Um, but yeah, so I think a good place to start, like I said, I called this legends in mythology and comics, and part of it was from stance, but part of it from checking out this awesome book right here
Yeah,
that Mr. Russ Leach has created, and he's got book 2 also on Indiegogo right now. There is a link in the description, and I will put a link right now in the chat, but we'll probably put it in again later too. But just so he's doing it again. But speaking about legends, is we just lost a big legend,
we did.
last week,
Yeah.
and it's pretty crazy. Man, I actually wanted to pick your brain a little bit about that, like what was it like? I don't know, what's like your experience with Neil Adams? I know mine is interesting and kind
Yeah,
of late
mine was
coming, but
interesting as well. Yeah, I managed to catch him at the end of a convention,
uh-huh.
London. Uh, is it LCC? I can never remember the LLCC or something like that. I can never remember the names of these things. I'm rubbish with names. I remembered
Mhm.
Neil's name. I walked past him. I went, "Oh, that's Neil Adams," and
Mhm.
I just basically went in and said, "Is it all right if I come in and say hello?" And he went, "Yeah, sure, it's okay." And he had me in. He told me a funny story about artists losing their hair, which was obviously aimed at my baldness. And we had a
Yeah, I didn't
giggle.
wear my hat today, which
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
mistake.
We had a giggle. He was very warm. Um, I wasn't there to show my artwork. I
Yeah.
didn't. I literally just wanted to talk to the man.
Yeah.
And he chatted for a good 10-15 minutes with me, and he had a couple of people with him, a bit of an entourage, obviously helping him out with the stall and what have you. And yeah, it was a very, it was a warm jibe. He was taking the piss out of me, which was great. And it was just a very pleasant memory of a man who I'd looked up to for an awful long time.
Yeah.
I often talk about John Buscema because he is my favorite artist, but there are multiple artists from the time that mean huge amounts to me, and Neil
Yeah.
Adams is one of them. I have I have lots of his Batman work up on the shelves, and that means a lot to me. So it was really cool to speak to the man directly and to know that I'd actually been able to do that, especially now that he's gone, because
Yeah.
you don't get that chance again. And I've not been able to do that with many artists because it's not been the way that my career has gone. I've not spent a lot of time at conventions. I spent a long part of my working life not being in comics because I had to earn money. I was out there, you know, in publishing and marketing and advertising and design. And those production environments didn't take me anywhere near comics, even though I still loved them. And it was only when I decided to take the dive in 2010 that I actually got into them seriously. So it was a chance meeting. I managed to get there. I also managed to meet Herb Trimp as well. So you know, those were two, and Herb Trimp was like, he was funny. um, so yeah, it was really cool to be able to meet those people. Um, uh, One other person I was introduced to was Charlie Adlard,
Mhm.
and this was just before I got my break on Doctor Who Adventures, and I was working with Unstoppable Comics. And he said, "Do you want?" He offered. He just said, "Do you want me to take a look at your work, so you know, so we can have a chat?" And I went, "Yeah, okay." So I showed him some stuff, and he was very complimentary. He gave me some good pointers, um, and I was always very appreciative of the time that he took to give to me that day, because he didn't have to. I was introduced to him via a mutual connection, Tim
Mhm.
Quinn, who actually has edited Only Death Can Save Us and used to work for Marvel. And he actually broke Charlie Adlard in, so into the industry. So
Oh,
it was really cool to be with both those people. But yeah, you know, being able to speak to Neil and just a few other of those artists, it meant a lot to
yeah,
people, to someone like myself who'd grown up with, obviously not Charlie Adler, but with Herb Trimp and Neil Adams, you know, grown up with those influences. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, I saw Neil years ago at a New York Comic Con. I saw Neil from a distance, and I didn't dare get close to him. I figured just by the proximity, he would know how bad my art sucked. So,
you can just smell it on people.
yeah, pretty much.
I pretended I was a writer.
There you go. I've heard a lot. It's funny because now, because of the news and all that, like you hear all the nice things about him and stuff. But man, so many times, if I've ever heard anybody talk about Neil Adams, it's like, oh man, he totally like butchered my work when I met
Yeah.
him and tried to show him my work and stuff. And
Well, the thing is something that you're not seeing these days is honesty.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I can understand to a degree. I mean, I see some posts. I see an awful lot of fantastic art online. Okay, really, really good stuff. And you think, why aren't you drawing for bigger companies? And it's just the way it happens is I don't consider myself the best artist at all. Okay, I'm a professional. I get the job done. You can depend on me to get work done,
mhm,
and it'll be good quality. But I'm not the best artist. But I've got the work that I've got, and some of it, unfortunately, comes down to luck. It comes down to knowing people, getting yourself out there. Okay, you can say you make your own luck,
mhm,
um, to a degree, but you got to get out there and do it. But there's definitely lucky breaks, definitely lucky breaks. And
mhm,
so you will see some people out there who just got fantastic art and aren't being picked up by big publishers, and you think, well, why not, but that's just the way that life goes. It's one of those things. But then you'll see other posts of other people's art, and they're awful. They're just straight up awful and objectively awful. And other people will be very, very complimentary, and it's like, that's not helping those people get better.
yeah.
Okay. All right. You don't have to be Neil Adams. No, you don't have to crucify
Nobody is.
people. No, of course, nobody is. But you don't have to crucify people.
Yeah,
But just saying, yeah, that's great, isn't helpful.
yeah.
And unfortunately, some people can be very precious and very brittle and can't even take oh, well, maybe you should do some figure drawing, or maybe you should think about anatomy, or maybe you should think about perspective or whatever. And they just break up. And unfortunately, there's plenty of people out there who want that kind of critique, but you don't know who they are. And of course, the internet and social media is just full of people that will bite you back just for trying to be nice. So
Mhm.
it's difficult to comment. But of course, back then there wasn't social media and all these, conventions where Neil Adams was. People would take the work. Okay, he's getting paid because he's doing a fantastic job. He's professional. He knows what he's doing, and they'll look at something and go, "No, that's crap." Next. It's like he doesn't need to. He never needed to worry about that kind of stuff. It was a
Yeah.
different world, and he could be brutally honest. And sometimes it was brutal, but in order for you to be in the same position as Neil Adams was in,
Yeah.
you needed that brutal connect. You needed that brutal honesty because you needed to be that good
Yeah.
to be where
No,
Neil Adams was. As
and
much as
that's
I talk about making your own luck, Neil Adams was always going to be one of the best ever comic strip artists
oh yeah.
because he was just that good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the kind of commentary he was making on the art that was being shown to him. He was just simply saying, if you want to be this great, this good kid, then you got to do these things.
Yeah, and I would actually definitely bring my stuff to him. It's almost like kind of silly to like at my level, like no, I'm not gonna bring my stuff to him. Like, but if I was like at like a certain like I'm kind of almost there, but I need
Mm,
help, like
mm,
that to me, I feel like okay, I don't mind getting critique. Like I
no,
went to Peter Cimenti years ago before Alterna was like as big. And I showed him my pages and he was very nice, but he also told me some things that need to be
yeah,
better and stuff. And I wasn't afraid to go to him because it's like, okay, like he's not Neil Adams. Like and he's a nice guy. So and I mean Neil Adams from all that I hear is an absolute awesome guy as well.
mm,
But I mean truth is great. Like that's what you need as an artist. If you're
yeah.
at a place where like your stuff is like almost there but it's not quite there, like Neil Adams is the guy to probably go to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like there's there's ways of doing it, and like I say, there's gentle ways of doing it and being nice and constructive. Okay, and that's great. Okay, but Neil Adams was in that position where, just like you say, if people were showing them their work and it was basically stick figures, it's like, get out of here, kid. You just go away. You're wasting my time. And
Yeah.
you can understand where he's doing it for the love of the industry, for the love of the art. He's
Mhm.
basically saying, look, if you're going to topple me, if you're going to take my spot on Batman or Justice League or whatever it might be, then you've got to be this good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to be a harsh critic because the people that get through and keep coming back and keep coming back and keep getting better, they're the people that are going to take my crown.
Yeah.
And that was, I believe personally, I believe that's where it all came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, maybe it's a bit cantankerous as the older he got, but aren't we all? But I think I believe that's where it came from. He just loved the art so much that he was basically pushing those people to be better.
Yeah.
That was just the way he did it. Not everybody's the same. Some
Yeah.
people will be more gentle. Some people will be harsher. Some people just won't speak to you. I mean, I won't say their names, but I know several artists that are just like, no, not doing that. Not
Yeah.
talking to you. I don't want to do that. I'm not giving you advice. You're my competition. Go away. So
Yeah.
or they're very shy, or retire, or just don't want to be involved, and they just don't want to know. So the fact that he gave his time at all is special.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, what was your like your first like time of like what was your experience as far as like just being exposed to Neil Adams? Like when do you remember like when you first started recognizing him
Ooh.
and what like I'm curious like what it was like
Well,
for you.
I didn't really start recognizing artists properly by their names
Hmm.
until very late on. To be honest, like in my mid-20s, so in the '90s era,
Yep.
and so I'm dating myself there. Um, so and then I sort of broke away from comics for quite a while, stopped buying them, and came back to them when I came back to comics 10 years ago, for 12 years ago now. And that's when I really started to recognize names and styles and apply them to each other and start to really appreciate what drove me and what was important to me. But I can look back and remember the things that I remember from being younger, from when I was a kid and what have you. And I do remember picking up late 70s Batman work, early 80s as well. And I think that was roughly when Neil Adams was doing his run, wasn't it? It was something like that, late 70s.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure the era, but
It was
yeah, somewhere
around
around
that
there.
time.
Yeah.
So I remember picking up that kind of stuff. I remember picking up Starlin, Warlock.
Hmm.
So Jim Starlin stuff on Warlock, and obviously the Buscema stuff and the Joe Sinnott, Palmer inking on Avengers and Fantastic Four, and then all the artists that came through the Captain Britain funnel, because obviously in 76, 77, when I was buying Captain Britain as a kid, that came in. But there was like, I know that there was stuff from Colon and Ditko that I'd got when I was, that my mum and dad had bought me, that I remember pages of. So yeah, I mean, to associate them by name came a lot later on, but I
Yeah.
do remember sort of being given comics, a particular, I think it was like 1979 or 1980, and I had a comic in my in my stocking, in my Christmas stocking, and that was a Warlock comic. So that was Jim Starlin, and I remember that. I've actually got the graphic novel of it now. I went out and bought it because I remembered that
Nice.
comic. So there are things that you do remember, in that, and styles stick out.
Yeah.
And that was like the way that Jim Starlin drew and the way that he wrote was very standout. It was very peculiar, very much of the time. But yeah, I mean, I've got a whole run of Batman, Neil Adams Batman. There's a whole set of graphic novels and trade paperbacks, I should say, and that's got some of the best Batman stuff in it. Just like I was listening to a clip of him the other day, and he was somebody was talking about Batman, about him changing Batman. He said, "No, I didn't change Batman." He said, "I drew Batman exactly the same way that I'd read him when I was a kid."
Yeah.
He said it was Denny O'Neil that changed Batman.
Yeah.
It was the writers that changed Batman. He says, "It wasn't me. I just did what I'd always done."
Yeah. Well,
So,
also, I mean, I heard him talking about that as well, and it's like, what he really did, what both of them really did was they brought Batman back to what he actually was, because because of the goofiness of the TV show and stuff, um, the comics kind of followed suit because the companies are like, well, that seems to be selling and this and that. And he's like, well, I love the show and everything, but that's supposed to be like a jokey version. Like,
yeah, that's not the Batman I grew up
really
with.
is
Yeah.
like when they were bringing in like kind of more realism and stuff, and it's like, well, yeah, that's what Batman already is. That's what he always was. Like,
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great time. It's great art. I mean, there's that one classic running pose, isn't it? I think it's from the Joker story, where it's this fantastic perspective, and you see Batman's hand is close to you, and you running all the way back, and he's running towards you, and I think there might be a splash at his feet or something, and it's just stunning stuff, and you can see where modern artists have looked at Neil Adams and gone, right, I'm going to do things like that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people influenced. I mean, when I started learning more about who's who and whatnot in comics, and I really started to recognize Neil Adams, I was like, Oh, that's I mean, Jim Lee must have got a lot of inspiration from him. But I mean, Neil Adams, like you look at his stuff, like because I had my dad like always showed me his old like Superman and Batman comics, and
Mm,
now later I look at them and it's like I'm like, that's a great cover, and I try to find out who the artist is because back then I didn't know, or I
mm.
was just a kid, but and I'm like, oh, it's Neil Adams, and like I see all these different things. Oh, Neil Adams, Superman, Batman, like, and I'm like, man, like everyone that stands out to me is Neil Adams because it's
Yeah.
so he's so good, and he brings like a naturalism, a realism to comics. He brought that when comics weren't that at all.
Mm, yeah.
He's kind of one of the first ones that kind of brought that, but then it's also very comic booky.
Very exaggerated.
It's not
Yeah.
like super realistic.
No.
And he there like everything you see him do has so much movement. Like Kirby brought movement, but man, Neil Adams brought movement and like
I
energy like
I
not
pretty
many
much
people could do.
put Buscema and Neil Adams on a par.
Mhm.
And Neil Adams was DC's Buscema. That's the
Yeah.
way I saw it.
I could
Um,
definitely
a-
see that.
and they would the both of them had fantastic anatomy skills and were really good with energetic movement. And that's what they put into their strips. I'm desperately trying to do that kind of thing myself.
Mhm.
But it takes a long time. And
Yeah.
those guys were doing it back when they were 20, 30, 40.
Yeah.
I started late on, and it takes a lot to catch up. I'm never going to be able to catch up. I mean, I could never catch up with those two anyway. But to get somewhere, at least somewhere close to having
Yeah.
that kind of flow in your work. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Neil Adams was, like, kinda better than most of the comic artists, like, right when he stepped on the scene,
yeah,
you
yeah. He
know?
just turned
So,
up and he was
how do you
brilliant.
catch up
Yeah,
with that?
you
Like
can't catch up with that. I mean, even Buscema's work. I've seen some of his earlier work where he was obviously trying to copy Kirby, and um, some of it was a bit stilted, but it didn't take him long, and then you could see just his style come through, um, and the
I
way
think
that he
both of
produced.
them I think both of them came from, already having an illustration background, right?
Yeah, well, they were back then. You had illustrate. You constantly had illustrators working on advertising. Now it's all photography or digital in some form or another. Very
Mhm.
little illustration, really, and not of the kind of illustration they were doing.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you had you had to be able to draw people and give them emotion, give them movement, even if you were just selling a soap bar. And so that's kind of the world that they came from, and they brought those skills with them.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, Buscema went back to it, didn't he? And then came back to comic books.
Yeah,
So
so did Neil, really. He
yeah,
actually left for a very long time
yeah,
and
yeah,
went
because
to
he could make more
advertising.
money
Yeah,
elsewhere.
yep,
That's the bottom line. So
yeah.
he did a lot for the industry, though, and people should be thankful for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's one of the things to me, like, to me, his legacy, like, anybody anybody who's doing independent art and independent comics, Indiegogo people, Kickstarter people, Image Comics, like, anybody who's doing that pretty much owes it all to Neil Adams, like
oh yeah, yeah. None of this
he's the
would be
first
here.
one who tried to do that. He did
Yeah,
continuity, and then there was other people who were doing it just by themselves, like the whole
mhm,
Dave Sims type stuff and,
yeah,
all that kind of stuff, but that was kind of a different that was also important, but that was more like the single vision, just kinda do your thing, but he kinda brought the firepower,
mhm,
and made his own company, and he also fought for, creators' rights within the system as
yeah.
well,
That's right.
so,
Yeah, get their
I
pages
mean,
back and that kind of stuff.
we owe a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah.
Like I was talking to somebody today about like page rates and stuff that like a couple artists were saying, and it's like, $100 a page, hundred something dollars a page. Do you realize, like, Ditko, Kirby, like all these, some of these great artists, like they were lucky if they got over like $50 a page, like.
Although $50 was a lot back then.
Yeah, it
But
was,
yeah, I
of
mean,
course,
I
yeah,
think
inflation, but still.
I think they were on. I think there was somebody was saying they're on $25 a page.
Yeah, yeah.
But obviously they were doing 5-6 pages a day.
Hmm.
And I think that was for breakdowns as well. But still, they were pumping stuff out. The more pages they did, the more they got paid.
Yeah.
And so what you had is you did have an environment where there were, I think there were a few masters. Do you know what I mean? There were a few people that were pumping it out quickly and with incredible quality.
Hmm.
But that wasn't across the board.
Hmm.
That wasn't. You can't go back and look at the artwork of the 50s, 60s, 70s and say all of it was classic. No, no. there
Well, there's
was
a
there
reason
was
why
a lot of
Neil Adams
rubbish.
stood out.
Yeah, there was a reason why Neil Adams stood out. Yeah, it wasn't just that he was brilliant. He was that much better than the competition, as
Right.
was Buscema. And like I say, there are several other artists of that time, and they're
Mhm.
all well known, and people know of them. And the reason they know them is because they stood out, is because their work did become art. But you know, the work that we'll that I look up to, this it's quality, it's art, but it's kind of not in vogue at the moment. There seems to be this drive to be very detailed and put lots of stuff on the page, and that doesn't always lend itself to telling a story.
Mhm.
And you always have to remember that the reason that stuff works so well, all of it, whether it was Neil or whether it was John, it worked because they told stories really well.
Mhm.
They kept the energy high, they kept the movement, and they told stories, and that was what it was really all about.
Mhm.
And rather than making the prettiest page ever, it just so happens those pages look pretty because they work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, totally. And since you're talking about story, I did want to kind of segue a little bit into the mythology portion of the legends and mythology. The legends was more, I kind of wanted to talk about Neil and all
mm,
that stuff. Um, but it goes well with what else I would like to talk about. And but first of all, once again, I'm going to throw the link in the description, but Russ's second book, it's still in demand, correct?
yeah, you can buy both books in demand actually because there's a double pack.
Okay.
So
So, and tell us just a little bit about kind of where we've come from and where we're going with the new issue of Only Death Can Save Us.
right. So I suppose without giving too much away, uh,
Without
yeah.
spoilers.
In the first issue, the protagonists come together, Chrissy and Dee, through a cosmic accident, are hurled together, and an ancient foe is defeated, just defeated, and it results in Chrissy being transformed. You're kind of left up in the air at the end with a bit of a cliffhanger. It's an encapsulated story. You can read it and put it to one side and say, "Great, that was fine," but there is an epilogue, as it were, and it takes you into the next book. In the next book, we find Chrissy and Dee on travels because they're not quite sure how to get home, and they manage to get home and find themselves in awkward positions. There's a new enemy. They come back together, so they're reunited, and they're put up against this new foe. Um, and again, there will be not so much a cliffhanger, but an epilogue to the end of this that will lead you into book 3 as
Mhm.
well. There's plenty of humor because I did inject some humor into the last book. Rick, who helped me out with the script on the last book, I came up with the ideas as far as what I wanted to happen in the second book, and he actually put the plot together with me, and he's scripting the whole thing again. So he's far more involved in the second book, and will be again far more involved in the third book. And he's done a cracking job. And there's several points of humor. So, for instance, one of the aspects is Chrissy's clothes now that she's been changed, and they're quite revealing. And there's several jokes about the fact that she's quite revealing, and it's a dig. It's kind of a dig at making superhero women like scantily clad. So it's kind of self-aware, it's tongue-in-cheek, but it's good sort of superhero-y, sci-fi sort of fun, cosmic nuts. So it's got a bit of Kirby in there. It's got some Kirby influence as far as the art is concerned, a lot of Buscema influence. I can show you one of the later pages if you like.
Yeah, of course. And just want to shout out everybody while he's looking for that. Thanks for hanging out in the chat. I see Frank in there, and Crimson Owl in there, Ronnie, Gary Hodges in there. Thanks for hanging out, and looks like you guys are having some good chat going on. Frank left, but that's all right. I appreciate the support. Ariana's here. What's up? Just getting some work done on her comic, or finished Alex Stormer graphic novel, 200 pages, and now starting on a huge graphic novel. Are you publishing it, Ariana?
Oh, good Lord, that's a big one.
I'm curious. I want to check it out if you've published it. I know Ronnie's got his web comic he's working on. Gary Hodges obviously has got some really cool stuff going on with his work. Really, really great stuff. Yeah, I mean, thanks for watching, guys. We're gonna see if I can get this piece of art up here. Oh yeah, look at this.
So I'll just pick that up a bit.
Let's take our faces out. Oh yeah, this is nice.
A bit of an action. This is an action page. So
I love how I love how your digital pencils look like real pencils. That's great.
They do. They do. But I draw exactly the same way. I haven't changed at all.
Right.
I think maybe it's that approach
that
stops my work looking too digital. If you see what I mean, it's just the way that I come to the page, as it were.
Absolutely.
I'll show you some inks because the inks are traditional inks. So yeah,
those are great. That's a great page. I love that punch. Nothing like a good punch in a comic.
That's an homage to a Judge Death story.
Okay.
Where the fire judge is no, it's not the fire judge, it's the other one. It's like he opens up his helmet and it stares. It's like the Ghost Rider stare, and it says gaze into the abyss or something like that, and Judge Dredd says gaze into the fist of dread, and it's a side shot where he throws his punch and it goes straight through the back of his helmet. So that's nice. that's what that is. That there are several places where I do things like that. There's another one earlier on in the book where it's even got the sound effect from the original Buscema page, where it's Hercules and Thor, and Hercules hits Thor and he goes up into the air, and the sound effect is spang. It's a stupid sound effect, but I actually went and got the sound effect and I placed it in, and I so it's a complete homage to that page.
Nice.
So I did that. So there's little bits and pieces. There are also little nods to things. So, for instance, in the first issue, there was a nod to Billy and Mandy. Do you know that thing on Cartoon Network from years ago.
I
The
don't.
The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. So it was
Okay.
Billy and Mandy and the Grim Reaper, literally.
Oh, okay.
And he said he used to speak in a deep Jamaican accent, and there was one, but my son used to love it, and he said to somebody was threatening him, he says, "Don't make me use my kung fu," and that's actually a line that Chrissy uses in the middle of the first book when
Okay.
they finally come face to face with the bad guy, and she says, don't make him use kung fu." So there's that. There's also where they're teleporting, she holds on to Chrissy and says surprise, and that's straight out of the fourth Star Trek, where they're on Earth and Captain Kirk goes back to the ship and the girl goes with him. She hugs onto him for the transporter and says surprise. So
Nice.
there's little bits and pieces that I love to chuck in all over the place.
Yeah.
I'll show you this traditional ink so that you can see that how these things work. There you go.
And I love Chrissy's character, man. Like that was such a great touch because you got like, you got these characters, these archetypes that are like they're speaking in not like Shakespearean, but like that kind of like just
Yeah,
like
hoity-toity,
God
godlike.
talk or whatever. I don't know what that is, but and then she comes along, and even though she's like a scientist and stuff, it's like she's just like a normal human,
She's
and
a normal person. Yes,
yeah.
definitely a normal person. She brings a bit of levity to the story and some normality as well, kind of like
Mhm.
bases you. And there's a couple of points in the second book where again you're being based, and there's actually a very poignant part which brought a tear to my eye after Rick had written it. So it's a good mix, and it helps to have a a really excellent scriptwriter like Rick working with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like how she brings like the humanity to it, and also she's not a weak character.
No,
Like
no.
she's very much like, well, I started this. I gotta
Uh,
help figure this out too.
yeah.
Like you're not going without
Then
me.
in the
Like
and in the second book she becomes stronger. She
mm,
becomes more self-confident, and is actually, I mean, in this particular part, he's saving her, but there's a
mhm,
bit of her saving him as well. So
mm,
and what that adds to is that adds to Dee's character by making him vulnerable. He's not
mhm,
all powerful, and that makes your hero that much more relatable as well.
yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of back and forth on that.
This is a
So,
great page. Another great page.
so there's lots of stuff happening, and yeah, I have really enjoyed drawing it and producing the book. Just like I say, a touch disappointed that things have happened that have stopped me from doing it as quickly as I wanted to. Right up until January, everything was on course, and then
Mhm,
the world changed for me, and
mhm,
things have just been put back. But like I say, it's on course. It'll be here for the summer, and I'm looking forward to getting that out and then getting the third book done. But in the meantime, I throw up occasional Doctor Who pages, so you can see me do work in Doctor Who magazine. And
yeah.
we chatted before. I've got another secret project as well, which I can't tell the world about at the moment,
Mhm,
but that's very exciting as well. So yeah, it's non-stop.
yeah. That's awesome. Um, like I said before too, like I think everybody knows like Russ is gonna get the job done. It's always been your track record, and you got the first one done really good, and so yeah, it's gonna be good, and it's
It
gonna be
will get
quality.
done. It will get done. It'll be quality. There will be extras for those people that have been so kind to have backed me and have been patient. There will be extras. I mean,
Yeah.
people have been patient, and that's great. But obviously, I'm up against people that have taken an awful lot longer to do their books. So it's not like I'm leaving people hanging for a year. That's unacceptable. It's just,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
2-3 months late because of, you know, the way things have happened.
Yeah,
And
there's some Indiegogos I've changed my address like 2 or 3 times before.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of people change their address, but obviously, you know, they'd actually changed their address before the due date, so
Mhm.
those things happen. I had
Yeah,
one today, but you know, I don't think it's fair to keep people waiting too long. I I understand why some people do the book first and then go, but I feel that uh, you know, to Indiegogo and Kickstarter, they're there to fund what you're doing. The idea of them is to give you a fund to get the job done, that people believe in you, um, and that, you know, you ought to give people the book promptly, but where things go amiss and life happens, it's okay. Um, the idea that, I mean, I know like Daphne won't get put a book up. Daphne Lage, who is a fantastic artist and very, very clever, um, won't put a book out on Kickstarter until she's got it done, and I applaud that. That's I'm really impressed with that. But that's her business model. That's the way she works, and I came to crowdfunding to use it as a way to fund the book to get it done. So I came at it from a slightly different perspective. I had some done obviously before I started. I obviously had an amount of work because you got to show some sweat equity. People have to
yeah,
see that you're in it and that you're doing it. But unfortunately, life does happen on occasion,
yeah,
and the universe kicked my ass this year. And I had things come in that I could not dismiss.
yeah,
But you know, the backers will get their book and they'll get a quality product as the, you know, as per the first product book, and some extras as well as a way to thanks
yeah.
to say thank you for the support. So yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think too, it depends on like, you know, like if you're a professional, you've done, finished comic books promptly before and stuff like that, like then yeah, start it as long as you got a couple pages just to show that you're committed, like
Yeah, yeah.
start it before you finish, like
Mm,
but like I know for me, I would only feel comfortable doing that if I had an artist working with me who I
yeah,
know does exactly that. But if it was me doing my own book, like, and I'm doing 100% of everything, like, I would probably wait till it's at least almost done, because I
yeah.
just know that things get delayed with me. I got a day
Mm,
job. It's hard to really,
yeah.
just say, "Hey, I'll have it done in 3 months," or something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is difficult. I mean, for me it was a, you know, done deal. There was no problem. It's just that other things happened
Yeah.
I had no control of.
Mhm.
Not all of them bad either. Some of them very good.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to do stuff. So,
Yep.
you know,
Totally.
but as long as you keep people informed, which I have, I've
Yep.
told them that, you know, it's going to be moved on, but there'll be, you know, stuff to replace you know, the fact that it's a little bit late, and people are okay with that as long as you're honest with them and open with them, and you're available as well. It's
Mhm.
like, you know, there's no point in me putting an update on the campaign every 5 minutes to say, oh, it's still late.
Yeah, right.
But people know where I am. I'm there on Twitter and I'm there on Facebook.
Mhm.
My email address is out there. If people want to get into contact with me and say, how's this going? How's that going? More than happy to answer. And I think that breeds confidence as well. The fact that you're available and you're transparent, and that people know that you're working. I mean, I can't do a whole lot on my channel at the moment because I'm so busy, but I do post a bit of art every day,
Mhm.
or nearly every day. So
Yeah.
people know that I'm there. They can see that, you know, stuff's
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
out, and, you know.
That's true. I always have always been impressed by, Muttman with his hero comic and stuff, and
Mm,
other people who, like, you know, you always see, even if it's just like a part of a panel or whatever, like and same thing with you. I always see posts from you, a little bit more of only death can save us, a little bit
yeah.
more. I'm like, yeah, I'm no qualms with whether
It's
he's going to
coming.
get the book done or not.
It's coming.
Yep. So speaking of course of Only Death Can Save Us, I wanted to get into the mythology piece
Yeah.
because um you know, man, like as I'm reading this story that you put together, I'm just like I'm like I don't know, like I love how you were like playing with mythology, like using that as like your creative, like I don't know, you were very creative with how you used already established mythology, you know.
Mm.
And as I'm reading it, I'm like I've seen you see so many comic artists, especially the greats, you know, especially Kirby. You know, you see Kirby, and he takes Thor and he does what he does with it, you know, and he takes other mythologies and he mixes it up and makes his own mythology.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much exactly what you did here. And I'm sitting here and I'm reading the thing and I'm like, why has nobody ever done this? Like maybe somebody has, but I'm like, this is like, why didn't ever anybody else use death in this way? Because
Yeah.
that's like brilliant. I'm like,
Well, I'm glad they didn't.
I'm
Yeah, it
like,
seemed
this
to
is
me
so
that
brilliant. This is exactly
yeah.
the type of thing that I would expect like Kirby or somebody else to do with
Well, thank you. That's
mythology in the
deep
tradition of
praise.
comics, you know?
Yeah, that's deep praise. Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to do was take a recognizable figure. So I
Hmm.
wanted to come to the table with something that people would recognize. Now, obviously, you know, you've got Ghost Rider, so you've got the skull, you've got death in general as being part of the culture, as it
Yeah.
were, over many cultures. And I saw that there were other comics that were using death as a character, but they all seem to be sort of, if not evil, on the very sort of um, inhumane side, if you'd like. Um, and I wanted to have a character that was simply death in name. Do you know what I mean? It's like it, he did the job of death, as it were, like a sort of an archetypal job of death, of like, you know, making sure that the souls move to the next place. Um, but I wanted it done in a very sort of pseudo scientific sort of I'd been watching a lot of YouTube, you know, and all that kind of stuff, all that stuff's soaking in, all that weirdness, and lots of coast to coast and all kinds of weird stuff. I love looking at documentaries about um, the oddities of quantum physics and that kind of stuff. And I was kind of mixing it all up, and also at the same time thinking, oh, I really want to do something with a recognizable character. And I thought, well, why not use death? And then extended it to the four horsemen of the
Yeah.
apocalypse. And it's like, well, what if these were the good guys? What if we've got it wrong? What if the cultural norms of this kind of thing are completely wrong? We've just, as humans, we've just made this stuff up. We haven't got a clue. Okay. And the fact that he's got a skull as a face is completely coincidental
Hmm.
because, as everyone knows, it's got the lines down the front and it looks sort of it doesn't quite look like a skull. And he's got the pointy chin. And it's
Yeah.
like some of that is investigated into the second book as well.
Hmm.
And I wanted to do something, and I wanted to do something that was really big, sort of fourth world kind of stuff, you know, something that was like cosmic. I love the whole cosmic stuff. I just think it's fun. Um, and so that's where I came from. And then on top of that, I wanted some kind of horde. I wanted Death to be able to stand up on the piles of bodies of his fallen foes, but also make these foes kind of throwaway, almost like the orcs from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
That you could have character orcs in that. You could build a little bit of character and have fun with them. But at the end of the day, you could just lay them and go on to the next one. And that's
Yeah.
the kind of thing that I wanted. So it just basically from there it all built out. And the original story was about I've still got it somewhere where I literally just scamped down a few lines. Was about Chrissy was always there. It was and it was about almost like Death's redemption because he'd become disconnected from normal human or alien. Doesn't matter whether you're human or alien, like normal conscious beings that had lives, and he'd become godlike. He'd become away from it. And so by bumping into Chrissy and Chrissy's story of the accidental opening and stuff that happened in the first book, eventually through her potential demise, he found empathy and became more of a like a living being again. And so it was like developing his character, at the same time developing her and developing their connection together and the whole aspect of humanity within it, which sounds very deep, but it was just like it just all came from it. So and the mythos aspect of it, I'm just going to share something else with you, which is one of the pages that are extras that were going in the Arrow comics. Unfortunately, the Arrow comic stuff isn't happening now, but I did a whole bunch of extra pages which you're going to get in the second book, and they're basically mythos pages of creatures and world building aspects that will be some will actually be used in the third book. And they're like, this guy's just floating around the heavens and you're not quite sure what his use is, but there's some backstory to it, and it's called I can't remember what the section's called because it's late at night. But you can see there's another one there.
Wow.
And it's quite sort of, there's Kronos and he tells the story, and he's basically a bit like the Watcher, and it tells you the story of how creation came about and how the core consciousness that's the underpinning aspect to all reality, all matter is built on consciousness, and it split itself again and again and again to create the original gods and the first ones, which we talk about. It's in the script in the first book. We talk about the first ones, and Kronos is one of the first ones, and he's kind of like the Watcher, and he tells these stories. So you get all this extra background stuff, backstory stuff at the end, but it's all built out from mythos, from their various mythologies. And I've gone to Sumerian, to Norse and Egyptian mythologies to look at names, gods, environments that I can use to build into this stuff and to underpin that whole concept of all the mythologies we've got. There's no smoke without fire. There's some truth to it, but we're completely ignorant of the real truth, which is why you get the fact that D is misconstrued for a bad guy. That's the cover. Don't want to give away too much, so there's a couple of pages of the color. There you go. And there's another mythos page. So
that's so cool. Yeah, I love it, man. I mean, I love the, you're definitely inspired by some Kirby tech and
yeah. There's that a lot of that was very Kirby. So some of the Buscema line work, and Joe Sinnott's sort of solid lines, but very much the cosmic stuff was inspired by the way Kirby put things together. So yeah, I mean, so that whole mythology thing, and originally I wanted, when I was talking about the fact that I wanted a recognizable character and to hit the ground running kind of thing, I was also thinking along the lines of Thor and a pantheon of gods. And that feel that just to make it sort of more familiar to someone who'd been reading comics, because really what I wanted to do was try and get hold of those people that had been reading comics back in the day when I was, and see if they wanted to buy new material. But we'll see how it goes. As I mentioned, I don't think we were live when I was talking about it, but the next book, third book, is most likely going to be an Amazon thing. Probably publish it on Amazon, and it'll be so all my backers will be able to get the book on Amazon, and it'll be $9.99. It'll be $10 or whatever. So you won't have to but you won't have to do any sort of crowdfunding on it. It'll just be straight out, and I'll be able to tell everybody it's there, and you can go and get it. And obviously, because I've been backed for the first 2 books in the way that I have been supported by my backers, it's meant that I can do that, and I can have that 3rd book for a really, really low price.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I want to do is put all 3 books out in that way, and then have a compendium where it's all the black and whites. So it's all in black and white, soft cover, maybe
Mhm.
15, $20 or something like that. Like not a huge amount for 240 pages for like a bigger black and white book, and see that through Amazon as well.
Nice.
But
Nice.
we'll see where it all goes. See where it all goes.
Yeah, totally. I think that's an interesting way to go about it. I just think, I don't know. I was just, because to me, like, I think the big thing when you were first having this campaign, and just really when anybody I think thinks of what you do with your comics and stuff, you're automatically like, oh well, he loves the Bronze Age, so it's going to be a Bronze Age type of story and all that. And man, you'd like really I was just like, I don't know why I feel like I was kind of surprised, but you really like pulled it off. Like it like,
Thanks.
I mean, your art is already there, but the story, I was like, I feel like I'm reading like, a Kirby comic or something.
Yeah,
Like,
that thanks. It's because I went for a very straightforward way of telling a story.
hmm
I didn't want to bury it in. I'll only say this word once in the whole of this podcast. I didn't want to bury it in politics or ideology,
right.
wherever you're from. But that's just not what I'm interested in. And I don't see a problem with putting things like that into comics. But I don't want to read those comics. I just want to have fun, and I
Yeah.
wanted to make fun, and the kind of comics that I read, um, even like we were talking about Neil Adams earlier in the Batman run. I mean, like that yeah, that was serious, and it had some great storylines to it, but they were still fun to read. Nobody was
Yeah.
ever preaching at me
Yeah.
through the story. They were just letting me enjoy the story,
Well, I mean,
and
they had that Denny and Neil had that famous, run in is it Green Lantern or
Green
Green
Lantern,
Arrow?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
yeah. I
don't,
think it was Green
and
Lantern.
and that was
Yeah,
like, it got very political. It got very,
yeah.
there was a lot of issues, but at the same time, like, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't read it, but like from what I hear about it, it's like, it sounds like it wasn't like, it still was entertaining as something good to read, and it wasn't preaching, and it showed all sides of
That's
everything.
that's the
Like,
thing. That's the thing is that they were able to put their inner felt, you know, innermost feelings into that. They were able to put things into that they thought was right, that they believed in.
yeah.
Um, but they did it in a way where it was a story first,
hmm
okay, and it was entertaining as a story, and then there was a message. I mean, you can watch a Simpsons and there'll be a moral at the end. There's
hmm
nothing wrong with that. That's what great stories are. Great stories often have morals in them, or
Right.
often have points where you're sort of maybe saying, maybe this is right and this is wrong. That's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But to do it in such a way that you can't get away from whatever the writer wants you to think, rather than finding your way for yourself, I don't find entertaining.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. So the way that I wanted to approach this was that no matter what I put into it, whether I put in some gentle pokes, poking gentle fun at Chrissy's costume in the second book, okay,
Mhm.
or whether it's whether it's dealing with loss, um, or evil, it's like it's not to say that it's simple and black and white. It's just to say that it's straightforward. It
Mhm.
it's about it's about it's about delivering a story and delivering um, something that you can get your teeth into, without giving it too much effort. Do you know what I mean? It needs to wash over you a bit. You need to be able to enjoy the comic. There's deeper stuff in there, as I've suggested with the backstory stuff. There's loads of stuff in there that you can go look for, that you can read into it. But it's totally up to you. And maybe that's why it felt sort of more Bronze Ages as well, because that's the kind of stuff I used to like when I was younger, when I was a kid. It's just easy to pick up, easy to read. And fun, just fun to follow along with the story.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing, I won't spoil, but I will say, there is kind of a twist, in the endish area, and you know, that's another great thing about, like, I was talking about this to a friend. They were talking about like twists at the end, and I'm like, yeah, man, I really loved how they did, Kirkman did twists and Walking Dead and stuff. That was one of the things I thought, like, sometimes there can be like a twist, and it's not satisfying, or it's like it's too much, like they should have told you some more stuff or whatever. But like sometimes it's actually kind of satisfying, and it does make you want to read the next book, and that definitely happened with this. That's not the only thing that makes me want to read the next book, but there's a few things like leading.
Yeah.
You could tell it's leading somewhere. But it's just I love like a nice, some kind of little twist. And then I was thinking, as I was talking about The Walking Dead, I'm like, actually, tw- that's kind of almost like ubiquitous in comics. Like, comics kind of always have a twist usually.
They don't anymore.
They so often have a twist
Yeah.
that I can say they always have a twist.
They
don't
don't
always, though.
Modern comics don't seem to do it quite as much.
Yeah,
It's
at
because of
least
the
what
way
I've
I think it's because of the way
experienced.
they write them, because they're writing for the trade paperback.
Right.
So it's sort of like an expanded storytelling. What I used to like in the Bronze Age was that you could drop into Spider-Man magazine and start anywhere, and eventually you'd
Yeah.
get caught up with what happened before, because there'd always be something. And a lot of the times the comics were a story in themselves.
Yeah.
So even though there was maybe a cliffhanger at the end, you'd encapsulated what had happened in that monthly title
Yeah.
and then moved on to the next issue. And it's the same. That's what I tried to do the same with this, is that you can read the first story in its entirety and not read the last 2 pages or something. And then you're fine. Then you could just read that and think, oh well, I've read that book, and it's an open-ended ending, but that's okay. Books are like that. Some books are like that. Or you can read the last 2 pages and go, oh right, this is going off somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I wasn't expecting that. And hopefully the second book is going to do the same thing. You're going to get to the end and go, all right, okay, this is where this is going, and I wasn't expecting that. So it will be wound up in book 3. It is an arc. It was always meant to be a 3-book arc. I have some if I do book 4, 5, and 6, which I would like to do, there's a four runner. Is it 4? I can't remember the expression for it, where effectively you set something in that you're going to tell later, and there's some of that in a flashback within the second book. So that would actually connect in with books 4, 5, and 6. Should I go on and do those? I've already thought about the story for 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be pretty cool if I could do that. And of course, if I get onto Amazon, and the more books you have on Amazon, the more chance you have of selling as an author.
Oh, okay.
So if I can get, if I could get to a point where I've got like 9 books or 10 books on Amazon, then that would be really good. Because that would be an amount where you could get reviews and they could, perpetuate the sales.
So is that a print on demand situation, or is that you will still be you'll be the seller of the books?
No, they do a print on demand.
Okay.
So
No, I
you
realize that, but
yeah.
I know you
Oh
could do
no,
it a few different ways, you know.
no, I wouldn't want to keep stock because I'm
Yeah,
not that kind of business. My business is drawing comic book pages.
right,
That's what I do for a living. I
right.
don't have room for lots of stock. So there's a fee. What you do is you pay them a fee, and they help you out with the production, and then it goes up, and you split the price of the book, and they do the postage themselves. So you don't pay the postage. You just split the price of the book with them. I think it's 70/30 on physical books,
Okay.
and and that's the cover price, 70/30. And they just make the book and send it out.
Nice.
So for me, it's like because currently I'm in two mainstream gigs. It's like it's the right thing for me to do because
Yeah.
I can't give the time to fundraising
Yep.
to crowdfunding while I'm working for other people. It's just impossible to do. So yeah, that looks like at the moment that's the plan moving forward.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. I mean, honestly, as I said before, there's you don't just because crowdfunding is hot, it doesn't mean it's the only way to
Yeah,
go, and there may be even better ways,
yeah,
depending on your situation. So
yeah, exactly. Sometimes you can talk to a publisher and and see what they can get you.
yeah,
The problem is handing over percentages of your intellectual property.
yeah.
The other argument is if your intellectual property is worth nothing, then then what? There's not a problem with handing over a percentage of it.
Mhm.
But you do have to be careful. It's a bit of a minefield.
Yeah,
Um, the great thing about print on demand in some through someone like Amazon is you can pay for advertising. You do your own advertising and marketing. You can build out from where you are. You don't have to keep stock. You don't have to warehouse it. You don't have to pay for the printing up front, and you don't have to worry about the postage. So there's swings and roundabouts. So obviously you don't get as much money from each book, but you've got a far bigger shop window. I mean,
yeah,
it's all
and
very
plus,
well having an Indiegogo campaign, um, but 500 people on an Indiegogo campaign is stellar. Let's
yeah,
face it. Anybody who's doing over 500 is doing some other stuff. Okay, that I don't want to get involved with. But up to 500, I mean, like I got 270 in my first book, and I thought that was amazing, and that was
hmm,
really impressive.
yeah,
But
it is.
I understand that Amazon is a massive market, as in like there's lots of different products on there, and you're going to get swamped. But at the same time, it's a huge shop window, and so if you start marketing those people that backed you, the 270, you start getting yourself a mailing list together, which I do have, and then you can start hitting those people, and they'll might look at it and go 9.99, and I've already got Amazon Prime, so I'm not going to pay
Mm,
for the postage.
yeah.
Maybe they're more likely to
It
buy it than
fixes the
back it.
whole problem of international shipping too,
It
you know?
does. It fixes it fixes all of that. So I mean I started looking into Amazon, and I've spoken to them directly. And so I think that's something I'm going to do. Um,
Nice.
but it just comes down to business models. I
Mhm.
just can't see how I can make the crowdfunding business model work all the time. And what I'm looking for is obviously, if I don't work for mainstream publishers, I want to be able to fund myself. I don't want to have to go and find another job.
Yeah,
And as we all know, if you've been in mainstream, you know that mainstream can stop like that. You can be do on two titles 1 minute, and then the next minute both of them have just fallen off the radar as far as sales are concerned, and they're cancelled.
right.
And if they don't have a title to replace it, you haven't got any work. So
Yeah.
the best thing to do is to have your own intellectual property, is to have a product that you can move on to. But crowdfunding, I'm not sure is going to be something that provides enough. You see what I mean?
Mhm.
If I got 500 backers on every book and I did 3 books a year, which is one every 4 months, bearing in mind I'd have to do the postage as well and everything to do with it. I'd have to do the pencils and the inks and the colors and the lettering in order to make it worthwhile. That's quite a heavy workload to do on your own. And I'd probably have to do 3 of them a year to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
Whereas, okay, I don't know how the Amazon thing is going to go, but looking at those kind of routes, and I know that there are other people out there that have moved over to maybe selling their books off their own websites rather than going through, Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And there's lots of people looking into different ways of doing it, and I think we're in a situation now that there are people out there saying that the comic book industry is in tatters, that it's losing ground. And then there's other people saying, "Oh, we've never had it better. There's so many titles being sold," and it's like, yeah, but that's mostly manga. But I think realistically, it really is somewhere in between the two. And what's actually happening is the market is radically changing. It's changing under our feet and has been for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And bigger company, corporate comics, bigger companies find it more difficult to move quickly because of the nature of being a large company.
Yep.
And so that it takes a while for them to steer the ship round, as it were. Smaller independents have been able to latch onto the fund, the crowdfunding stuff, and get some books out in the meantime. But things are constantly in flux. So you've got to look for the angle. You've got to see what else can I do? Where else can I go? So sell anywhere and everywhere you can. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Good
Um,
advice. Solid.
yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of there's a lot of things that it kind of solves, especially depending on your situation.
Mm.
Do you have there's a looks like there's like a couple questions. Do you have time for maybe a couple questions
Yeah. Anything.
real quick,
Yeah.
and then we'll get going
It's just
after
me and the
that.
monkey.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to find it now. I had it.
Everyone else is in bed.
Yeah, well, where you live. What time is it over there right
It's
now?
20 past 12.
Oh boy, wow.
That's
All right,
okay.
we got to
That's okay.
get you done with here. All right, so we got Eli Pendragon Art. How you doing? He says, he or she says, I'm assuming it's a he. Do you find it easier to do the entire comic art and writing yourself, or do you like to collaborate?
I'll be honest, I prefer to collaborate, um, because I don't consider myself a particularly good writer. That's probably down to practice. Um, Again, I did the my own lettering in the first book, and I thought I did a reasonable job. But people who are doing lettering all the time are very, very skilled at it. And so it's always worth bearing that in mind. And I got somebody else, I got Eric Weathers to do the lettering in this book, in the second book. And there's another guy that I might approach at some point in time, a guy called Robin, who's in the UK, who I might ask to do the third book, and maybe even go back and re-letter the first book for when that gets published through Amazon, because I'm going to redo, I'm going to re-edit all the books so that the books that you got as a backer are unique. That you can't get them anywhere else. They're a one time only. So if you back those books, you got something special. But when they go out to the Amazon, when the book one and book two go out to Amazon, they'll be re-edited and they'll be slightly different. And so, if you're a collector, you might want to get those Amazon books as well. And obviously, they'll be far cheaper, so they'll be easier to access. Yeah, I do like collaborating. Certainly, working with Rick, the writer, has made it easier just because that's his thing. He's a writer, so he understands storycraft in a
Yep.
way that I don't. or I haven't got the experience of just yet. I mean, obviously, I've been reading comics a long time, and I've loved them. So I must have picked up something, because a lot of people have said how much they like the story in the first one, and most of that was me. So I must be getting something right. But it is hard if you do everything yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's an awful lot of work.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've had to distribute work for the second book out. So obviously Rick came on and had a bigger hand in the writing this time around. I've had a letterer involved. We've even had a few spots of inks done. Matthew Seaborn did me a couple of pages, and I've got a couple more from him at some point if you're watching. And I've had other people color the work. My daughter has actually colored a substantial part of the
Nice.
book, so she's followed the style from the first book. So yeah, in the third book, I don't know. Because I'm going to have a longer schedule, and I can do it at my leisure until I'm ready to go. I may end up doing it all again, apart from the lettering. But for the most part, it's good to collaborate. It's healthy as well, because you get lots of different viewpoints on how to tell a story, basically.
Yeah. And I feel like, if you can get the vision across in a satisfactory way as the creator, whichever part you play, like, um, then, collaboration, as long as the vision's coming across, collaboration kind of works fine. And the thing with the way you ended up doing it is you pretty much did this, like, you had help, but you did the bulk of this by
Yeah,
yourself.
basically, apart from Rick helping
Yeah.
me with the scripting and a couple of plot points at the end. This is
Yep.
after I'd written the whole story and the whole script and given it to him, and then he came in and helped me out and changed some of the dialogue
Yep.
and a couple of plot points, which absolutely improved it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he came in at the end, and in the second one, he's a lot more heavily involved. And Mike Summers did the colors on the cover for me, which I had him do on the second cover as well. Other than that, all me.
Yeah.
It's like I did
And
everything.
it's
So
easier, like, because you have this now, so it's like, okay,
hmm.
going forward, it's easier to collaborate because this is what I want it to be like,
Exactly. You've got a benchmark, and you say, right, it must be at least to this standard. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah, it's an interesting question, though. I think everybody's answer would be different. Frank
yeah.
Miller's answer would probably be different than yours. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but look, I mean, if you can do Sin City by yourself, then damn, do it.
Do
Like,
it. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
but
I think
that's a lot. That's a big task.
yeah. That's the thing, is it comes down to time. It's a
Hmm.
balance. How much time have you got? How much effort, can you, it's not just how much effort do you want to put in, it's how much can you expend. Um so for instance, at the moment, because I'm doing other work, because I'm doing other gigs, I can't expend as much man time, man hours, as I did in the first one. I just
Yeah.
physically can't.
Yeah.
So I have to be able to delegate stuff to other people, and then of course, that's a team. So fortunately, the work that I've been doing as well is I've in the other two, in the mainstream gigs that I'm doing, I've had to go and find colorists. So I'm working with, so I'm being given a script via an editor, and then doing the pencils and inks, getting them passed, and then handing them over to a colorist. Is then coming back to me. I'm checking it over, and then sending it, and then it's between me and the colorist, and then I'm sending it back onto the editor. So
Hmm.
you're constantly in collaborations of one sort or another. Um,
Yeah.
it's rare that you would do it all on your own, and if you do, good luck, because it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best comics have definitely come out of collaboration. Collaboration
Yeah,
is like a foundation of comics, like, Kirby and Simon, Kirby and Stan Lee,
yeah,
Neil Adams and Denny and like, there's so many others, I mean, you know, Superman came about because of a collaboration, like,
Exactly.
and that
Yeah.
started it all,
Yeah. Well, I mean, like
Batman did too.
early 90s, Jim Lee, Claremont.
Yep, there you go.
Who was his? Is it Scott? Who's his inker?
Scott Williams, the inker.
Williams. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like that combination
Yep.
was, it's still the biggest selling comic, isn't it?
Mhm.
X-Men 1,
Is it?
which I bought.
Yeah.
I remember buying it at the time, and it had that fold out gatefold.
Did you buy all of the covers?
They didn't do it back then. That was before they started doing all those shenanigans. I have got a couple with like holograms on the front and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it was before they started those kind of shenanigans. But they did have the gatefold cover, and actually, I tend not to put my comics away. I tend to read them. I take them out and I look at them. So that the covers off that, out the staples and everything, it's all just a mess because I just take it out and look at it all the time.
Oh yeah, I got stacks
Jim
of
Lee's Jim Lee's early work, I think, is not early, the mid work. That X-Men stuff I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
Very dynamic, hyper dynamic. So yeah, I mean, I've got my comics hanging about and I take them out and flick through them all the time.
Yeah.
So,
same here.
can,
Stupid Newfie says,
here we go. You can just see here. If I just that's what's in front of me. So the comics
Nice.
are all up there, like that, and up there. There's a Batman up there, and then there's some books behind me as well. Then, so.
Yeah, I can't turn my camera as much, but there's two huge stacks of comics that look like they're gonna fall on the floor right next to me. So
there's some John Buscema up on the wall as well.
Nice inspiration. So Stupid Newfie says, living or dead, and if money was no object, who would be your dream casting as Death in an animated or live action version?
Oh, Ray Winston would be Death.
All right.
Ray Winston. There you go. He was the voice. If you don't know who Ray Winston is, I'm sure you all do. He was the voice of Beowulf.
Okay.
You remember that CGI extravaganza that was Beowulf?
I don't know that personally, but
he's very cockney and gruff. And
okay.
I imagined that that there would be a lot of doth and art thou and lots of Shakespearean talk and very godlike talk from everybody. But Dee's voice would be gruff and cockney. And occasionally he'd swear. just occasionally. And it would be very human of him to do it, and he wouldn't understand why he did it. But I just imagined that. So there you
go. Nice. Awesome. Well, man, I'm looking forward to reading the next one. Once again, everybody, like, the link is in the description, but I'm going to throw it in one more time in the chat here, and definitely go and help. It's already funded and everything. It's in on demand.
Yeah,
but
it's on demand.
But
this is just
feel free to go get your copy.
This is a recent page to show you one of the gigs that I'm on at the moment. It's Doctor Who. I do. So this is coloured by Mike Summers. I do the pencils and inks, and the stories are often written by show writers, and then it's edited by Jason Quinn, who happens to be the brother of Tim Quinn, who's the editor on my Only Death Can Save Us book. So there's just a couple of pages from this one's already been published, so I can show you this.
Nice.
So it's just a street scene with some aliens in it.
So where can people get that stuff?
I think you can get it in America, and I think it's distributed by Titan.
Okay.
So I think you can get it. I'm sure somebody has said to me the other day that they were enjoying it and mentioned that they had it. So Doctor Who magazine, I think you can get. The strip is now down to 6 pages, but this particular strip was a 4-parter, so it's a 24-page story that runs over 4 issues. which is a bit like the old the way comics used to be. In the UK, at least, we used to run weekly magazines like 2000 AD and Captain Britain, and they had like 4 characters and 6 pages for each character. So it's a bit like that, except that it's not weekly, it's monthly. So it's a long time to wait for another 6 pages, but what the hell. So that's part of what I've been doing. So
that's cool that, it would be cool if they did that. I wonder if that would be like an interesting experiment to have like a weekly comic. Obviously you got to have a nice buffer and everything. But I mean, Shonen Jump is a pretty good example,
there you
Japan, I
go.
don't know,
The thing about
thing is, I
Shonen
don't know
Jump,
if we work as hard as them. That's the problem.
yeah. I mean, I think I'd probably kill myself if I worked as hard as those mangaka. I don't know that I could. I work pretty hard. I do 6 days a week, pretty much all the time at the moment. I start at I get up at 7 and I'm working till 7 at night probably. So I'm doing, I'm putting my shift in. I'm working. But those guys, I think they sleep like 3 or 4 hours a day. I plan on living longer, so
there you go.
I'll
They
be all
work in
right.
teams too, usually. So
Yeah. I want to be. I mean, like I say, I came to comic books late, the industry, as it were. I want to be as prolific as possible because I know it won't last forever. And I'm talking about my career. I know it won't last forever. I know I've got. If I'm lucky, I've got maybe 20 years, maybe another 20 years. That would be cool if I could.
I mean,
I could do it for another.
honestly,
And I want to be as prolific as possible. So
Neil Adams was. I mean, if you're lucky, man, Neil Adams could still draw just the same at the end there, and he was 80. So
that's what I plan to do. But I mean, obviously, once I retire officially, I would then be doing my own books. I think I'd then be exclusively doing my own books and seeing what I could pump out. Because I wouldn't have to. I wouldn't be beholden to a schedule for a mainstream publisher, and so it wouldn't be as harsh. But yeah, I do want to be as prolific as possible. But at the same time, I don't want to kill myself doing it. There are other important things like family and your health and getting out and seeing a bit of the world. A bit of sunshine does you good.
And a little bit of martial arts in there too.
Oh yeah. I do go training 3 nights a week.
Cool. All right. Well, with that, I just want to say once again, thank you everybody for hanging out with us. And thank you, Russ, for coming back.
I just want to answer Dale A. Sorry, I just want to butt in. I'm really sorry, mate. If you want to get yourself on my email list, you can do that by going to russleach.com or going to onlydeathcansavus.com. There's links there for you to get on the list. Once you're on the list and I get the books onto Amazon, then I can tell everybody on the list and you can pick it up cheap. Okay.
I guess I'm out of my normal practice of being a host. I should have asked you that.
That's okay. I was just answering the question. That's all. So
cool. Yeah, definitely go support Russ, follow his stuff. You absolutely will not be disappointed, especially if you're into Bronze Age traditional comics. Like I had a blast with this, so you're gonna love it. And yeah, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll talk to you on the next one.
Thank you.